Daniel Morris rubbed his tired eyes and squinted at the mailbox as he stepped out of his rental car. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over Whispering Pines, the quiet, suburban neighborhood he called home for the last 8 years. But tonight, something was wrong. Very wrong. He fumbled for his keys, jingling them nervously in his hand as he approached the front gate. The usual hum of lawn sprinklers and distant children's laughter was absent, replaced by an eerie stillness. The familiar scent of freshly cut grass and jasmine hedges was missing too. Instead, the air felt thick, heavy, like the calm before a storm. Daniel's fingers trembled slightly as he inserted his key into the lock of the front door, only to find it refused to turn. He tried again. Nothing. His heart skipped. The door handle was stiff, unyielding. Slowly, he stepped back and looked around. The porch light was on, a soft yellow glow spilling from the porch lamp he'd never left on. And in the driveway, an unfamiliar black SUV sat idling, engine humming quietly. He swallowed hard. "Hello?" His voice cracked as he called out, unsure who he was talking to. No answer. His mind raced through every possible scenario. Maybe his sister was house-sitting. But why wouldn't she tell him? He pulled out his phone to call her. No response. Daniel looked through the window next to the door. Movement. A shadow. Someone was inside. He pressed his face closer to the glass. A woman's silhouette pacing. Then, abruptly, the front door swung open before he could step back. She stood there, arms crossed, an almost insolent smirk playing on her lips. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice calm but laced with unmistakable condescension. Daniel blinked, caught off guard. This is my house," he said, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Daniel Morris. I've lived here for 8 years." The woman's smile widened. "Not anymore," she said, her tone dripping with certainty. "Karen from the HOA said you abandoned the property. I bought this place last month. Now, if you don't mind." She stepped aside as if dismissing an unwelcome insect. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest like a wild drumbeat. "Wait," he stammered. "You can't just—" But she was already closing the door, the bolt sliding into place with a chilling finality. He stood frozen on the porch, the cold creeping into his bones. His house. His sanctuary. Seized from him in a moment. In the fading light, his eyes caught the glossy welcome mat. It wasn't the one he'd left behind months ago. Bold letters spelled out a name he didn't recognize. Karen. The name echoed. In his mind, with growing dread, Karen Whitmore, the tyrannical HOA president known for her iron-fisted control over Whispering Pines. The woman who handed out fines like candy, who watched neighbors' every move, who had long been at odds with Daniel over his refusal to comply with arbitrary rules. But this, selling his house? The thought was absurd, yet here it was, a stranger occupying his home, his key useless, his life unraveling with terrifying speed. Daniel pulled out his phone again, fingers shaking. He dialed the HOA office number, hoping for an explanation, a mistake, anything. A polite receptionist answered. "Whispering Pines HOA, how may I direct your call? Is Karen Whitmore available?" Daniel asked. There was a pause. "I'm sorry, Ms. Whitmore is currently unavailable. Can you tell me why my property was sold without my consent?" Another pause. "I'm afraid I can't discuss that. Please leave a message." Daniel's hand tightened around the phone, jaw clenched. Outside, the SUV's engine purred softly. Daniel felt a cold certainty settle over him. This was no accident, no misunderstanding. This was a calculated move, and Karen was at the center of it all. Daniel couldn't shake the image of that smug woman's smile. It haunted him as he stood on his front porch, the cold air prickling his skin. How could someone, anyone, Just walk into his house and claim it like it was theirs. The thought made his blood boil, but beneath the anger was a gnawing unease. He paced the driveway, eyes darting to the black SUV still parked there. He had to get inside to find out what was happening to his life, to his home. But the door was locked tight, and the key that had opened it for years now sat useless in his pocket. Then he heard footsteps behind him. He turned sharply. The woman from the house was coming down the steps, hands on her hips, radiating confidence like a shield. Her brown hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, her gaze sharp and unyielding. "You're still here," she said with a smirk, as if Daniel was some kind of pest that wouldn't take a hint. "I need to talk to you," Daniel said, keeping his voice low but firm. "Who are you? What did you do with my house?" She folded her arms. "I'm Amber. I bought the house. I have all the paperwork. You probably got your address mixed up." Daniel's heart sank. She said it so casually, as if the years he'd spent building a life here were nothing. "This can't be real. I didn't sell anything. You have no right." Amber laughed, a cold sound that sent a shiver down Daniel's spine. "Rights? Look, I'm not here to argue with you. Karen said you abandoned the property. You were gone. Too long. I'm just the new owner." Daniel's mind raced. How could the HOA president, Karen, just declare his house abandoned? And how could she sell it without his knowledge? Something was very wrong. He took a step closer. "Where's Karen now? I want to speak to her. I want proof. I want my house back." Amber's smile faded for a moment, replaced by a flicker of irritation. "Karen's busy. Look, if you want to fight this, go ahead. But I've got a signed deed, and it's in my name now." Daniel felt a surge of desperation. "You don't understand. This is fraud. Someone forged my signature. This isn't legal." Amber shrugged, unfazed. "I'm just the buyer. Talk to Karen if you want answers." He swallowed his frustration and nodded slowly, sensing that pushing Amber wouldn't help. Yet, as she turned and walked back toward the house, Daniel noticed something. A small, barely visible tattoo on her wrist. The initials KW. His heart raced. "Karen Whitmore's initials?" He called out. "Wait, are you working with Karen?" Amber glanced over her shoulder, a cold smile returning. "You'll find out soon enough." The door slammed shut behind her. Daniel sank onto the porch steps, feeling the walls closing in. He pulled out his phone again and scrolled through his contacts until he found the HOA number. No answer. He left a terse voicemail. "This is Daniel Morris. I demand an explanation for the illegal sale of my property. Contact me immediately." Silence. The sun set behind the trees, the sky turning dark. Whispering Pines was no longer the peaceful neighborhood Daniel had known. It had become a labyrinth of lies, and he was trapped inside. Determined not to be defeated, Daniel pulled his jacket tighter around him and made a silent vow. He would uncover the truth. He would take back his home. But as he stared at the locked door, a new fear crept in. How deep did Karen's influence run? And who else was part of this dangerous game? The next morning, Daniel found himself parked outside the HOA office, a small brick building just a few blocks from his house. He had never needed to come here before, but now desperation pushed him through the glass doors. The reception area was pristine, almost sterile, with framed photos of the neighborhood's manicured parks and happy families hanging on the walls. A receptionist looked up and smiled politely. "Good morning. How can I help you?" Daniel cleared his throat. "I'm Daniel Morris. I live at 143 Willow Creek Lane. I need to speak with Karen Whitmore." The receptionist's smile faltered for a second, but she recovered quickly. "Ms. Whitmore isn't available today? Can I take a message?" Daniel's frustration flared. "No. I need to talk to her about my property. It's been sold without my consent." The receptionist glanced at her computer screen, then lowered her voice. "I'm sorry, sir. That's not something I can discuss. Daniel's jaw tightened. He noticed her fingers hover over the keyboard, hesitating. Maybe she was waiting for instructions, or maybe she was scared. He leaned in. Is Karen aware I'm here? The woman looked around nervously, then whispered, I'm not supposed to say, but she left suddenly last week. No one knows where she went. Daniel's heart thumped loudly. Karen, the woman who held so much power over Whispering Pines, had vanished. How convenient. Determined to find answers, Daniel pulled out his phone and messaged an old friend, Jenna, who worked in title research at the county office. Jenna had helped him before with property questions. Can you pull the deed records for 143 Willow Creek Lane? ASAP, he typed. Within an hour, Jenna replied. Something weird here. There's a quitclaim deed dated 2 months ago signed by you, well, a signature that looks like yours, notarized by someone named L. Harper. No record of this notary in the state. Daniel stared at the screen, disbelief swelling inside him. Someone forged my signature? Jenna replied quickly. Looks like it. Also, the property was sold to a private LLC, Golden Oaks Investments, registered 2 days before the deed was filed. Registered agent, Karen Whitmore's sister, according to public records. A cold rage began to build in Daniel's chest. This was no random fraud. This was a carefully orchestrated scheme. Karen wasn't just the HOA president, she was playing a deeper game. He thought back to Amber, the woman who now occupied his home. The tattoo, the cryptic words. Could Amber be more than a buyer? Maybe she was Karen's pawn, or worse, her enforcer. Daniel's phone buzzed again. This time, an anonymous text message. You're digging too deep. Stop now or you'll lose. More than a house. His hands trembled. Someone was watching him. Suddenly, the polished exterior of Whispering Pines felt like a cage. Daniel knew Karen had enemies, but she had more allies, hidden, silent, dangerous. And whoever controlled, the HOA board was determined to keep this secret buried. He glanced back at the street. The black SUV was gone, but the threat lingered. For the first time, Daniel realized this wasn't just about a forged deed or a stolen house. It was about power, and Karen had been playing a game he wasn't prepared for. But Daniel was no quitter. He made a silent promise. He would unravel every thread of Karen's web, no matter the cost. Because if he didn't fight now, he might never get his home back. Daniel sat at the worn kitchen table of a nearby cafe, his laptop open, eyes scanning. Every line of the property records Jenna had sent him. Each detail was like a cold dagger twisting deeper into his gut. The quitclaim deed looked official on paper. It had his name, his supposed signature, a notary stamp, and a date, 2 months ago, right in the middle of his absence. But Daniel knew the truth. He hadn't signed anything. He hadn't authorized the sale. Someone had stolen his identity. Jenna's notes ran through his mind. No record of the notary. Golden Oaks Investments, a shell company. Karen's sister is the registered agent. This was no coincidence. Daniel's fingers trembled as he clicked through the digital copies of the documents. The forged signature was crude, but convincing, enough to fool a casual glance. The notary's details? Completely fabricated. He leaned back, overwhelmed. Someone had executed a ghost transaction, erasing his ownership without a trace of a proper sale. His phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. Stop asking questions. Daniel swallowed hard. The threat was clear. But fear wasn't going to drive him away. He needed help. He dialed the number of Laura Jennings, a real estate attorney Jenna had recommended, known for handling complex fraud cases. Mr. Morris, Laura answered, voice steady but serious. I reviewed the documents you sent. This is textbook forgery and fraud. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Daniel exhaled sharply. Is there any way to reverse it? To get my house back? It won't be simple. But we can file a lawsuit to void the deed, demand an investigation into the notary and potentially criminal charges. She paused. One thing worries me, this Golden Oaks Investments Company. It's tied to Karen Whitmore's sister. This is bigger than a simple HOA dispute. Daniel's mind reeled. Karen wasn't just a power-hungry HOA president. She was orchestrating a network of fraud. He needed to dig deeper. After ending the call, Daniel pulled out a notebook and started jotting down names, dates, and addresses connected to the abandoned homes around Whispering Pines. One by one, he cross-referenced public records and discovered a disturbing pattern. At least 5 properties had been quietly sold in similar ways. Owners gone for long periods, forged documents, shell companies, and HOA letters declaring abandonment. His gut told him Karen had masterminded a system to seize homes, then sell them off through proxies. Why? Greed, power, control. But there was more, something darker. As the cafe lights flickered overhead, Daniel's phone buzzed with an incoming email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "Proof inside." His hands shook as he opened it. Inside were scanned copies of HOA board, meeting minutes, documents not meant for public eyes. In them, Karen and other board members discussed processing abandoned properties, legal loopholes, and fast-tracking sales to trusted buyers. There was also a list of addresses matching the ones Daniel had found. His house was at the top. His breath hitched. Suddenly, his phone vibrated with another message from the same number. "Stop now, Daniel. This isn't just business, it's personal." The cafe around him blurred. Daniel realized that by seeking the truth, he had stepped into a minefield. Someone wanted to scare him off. But as his eyes hardened, Daniel knew one thing for certain. He was not going to back down. He had to reclaim his home no matter the cost. Daniel's days blurred into restless nights as he chased shadows through the corridors of power that Karen Whitmore once ruled. Each lead he followed ended in a wall of silence or a locked door. He called the local police department to report the forgery, hoping for a swift investigation. But the officer he spoke with sounded sympathetic, yet defeated. "Without concrete proof beyond the forged documents, there's little we can do," the officer explained. "Property fraud is tricky. You'll need a lawyer to push this further." Daniel nodded, frustration bubbling under his skin. Every step forward seemed to push him 2 steps back. He turned back to the HOA board members, hoping for allies. Instead, he found cold faces and polite refusals. "I'm sorry, Daniel," said one board member during a tense meeting. "Karen handled all property-related issues. We weren't involved in her decisions." Another simply shook his head. "You'll have to take it up with the courts." Daniel's phone buzzed late one evening with a text from an unknown number. "You're digging in dangerous places. Stop now." He stared at the screen, the words chilling his blood. Then came the whispers from neighbors, furtive glances, locked doors, hushed conversations ending when he approached. One evening, as Daniel walked the neighborhood, a man stepped out from the shadows. "You don't belong here," the stranger growled. "Karen's gone, but her people still watch." Daniel's heart pounded. "Who are you?" he demanded. The man's eyes gleamed coldly. "Call me a warning. There are forces in this town bigger than you realize." Before Daniel could respond, the man disappeared into the night. The message was clear. Stop digging or face consequences. But Daniel's resolve only hardened. He began visiting properties listed in the files, observing empty homes sold under suspicious circumstances. One house had fresh paint but no electricity. Another's mailbox was torn down. Every place felt like a ghost town. At the edge of the neighborhood, he met a woman named Claire, who reluctantly admitted she was once a board member but resigned. "Over Karen's tactics, they lied to us," Claire said quietly. "Karen manipulated the HOA to seize homes, then sold them off. I tried to expose her, but I was silenced." Silenced how? Daniel pressed. Claire hesitated. Threats. Intimidation. The kind that makes you think twice before speaking again. Daniel's pulse quickened. This wasn't just fraud. It was a conspiracy of silence and fear. As he left Claire's house, he noticed a black sedan parked across the street, engine off, windows tinted. The driver watched him with a steady, unreadable gaze. He felt the weight of unseen eyes. Back home, Daniel found his mailbox stuffed with a single envelope, no return address. Inside was a photograph. Karen Whitmore, smiling broadly, standing in front of a group of people. Behind her, barely visible, was the silhouette of Amber, the woman now living in his home. On the back of the photo, a message scrawled in red ink. "You're in over your head." Daniel crumpled the photo in his fist, anger and fear swirling inside him. He wasn't just fighting for his house anymore, he was fighting for the truth, and someone wanted him to lose. Daniel's nights grew colder, the weight of unseen threats pressing on his shoulders like a storm about to break. But just as the darkness seemed all-consuming, an unexpected light flickered. It began with an email. No subject, no sender name. Inside, a single line. "Meet me at the park at midnight. Come alone." Daniel's gut clenched. Was this another trap? Or a chance for help? Desperation won over caution. He arrived at the park under the shroud of night, the swings creaking in the breeze and the distant hum of the town's late-night quiet settling over him. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. It was Jenna, the title researcher who had uncovered the forged deed. But her expression was grave, her eyes darting nervously. "Daniel," she whispered, "you're in deeper than you realize." He nodded, relieved yet wary. "What do you mean?" Jenna pulled a folder from her bag and handed it to him. Inside were documents, emails, transaction records, internal HOA memos, all implicating Karen Whitmore and several other HOA officials in a massive scheme to seize and sell properties, under the guise of abandonment. "This isn't just about your house," Jenna said, voice low. "Karen and her allies have been running this racket for years. They use fake documents, shell companies, and even bribed officials to cover their tracks." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Why come to me now? Aren't you risking a lot?" Jenna hesitated. "Because I found something new. Something that might turn the tide." She slid a USB drive across the table. "Inside is a recording from one of Karen's meetings. You'll hear her talking about how to deal with troublesome owners, people like you." Daniel plugged the drive into his laptop and pressed play. The muffled voices filled the small space. Karen's voice was unmistakable, cold, calculating. "If anyone interferes, make sure they understand the consequences. We can't afford leaks." A second voice, unfamiliar but stern, added, "Understood. The sooner we finalize these sales, the better." Daniel's blood ran cold. "You have to go public with this," Jenna urged. "But be careful. They have eyes everywhere." As if to underscore her warning, Daniel's phone buzzed with a text message from the same anonymous number. "You think you're safe? Think again." Daniel looked up, eyes scanning the dark park. "I'm not backing down," he said quietly. "Not now," Jenna smiled faintly. "Good, because I have one more ally to introduce you to." From behind the trees, a tall man stepped into the dim light. His features were sharp, his stance confident, yet cautious. "This is Mark Evans," Jenna said. "He's a former investigator who's been tracking the HOA's illegal activities. He's got contacts inside the county and some serious muscle if we need it." Mark nodded, his eyes meeting Daniel's with a hard resolve. Karen's network is extensive, but no one's untouchable. For the first time in weeks, Daniel felt a spark of hope. Together, the three of them began to plot their next move, gathering evidence, reaching out to potential witnesses and preparing to expose Karen and her cronies once and for all. But as Daniel glanced at his phone, another message arrived. You should have stopped when you had the chance. The game was far from over, and Karen's shadow loomed larger than ever. Daniel felt the chill of the night air as he and his small team gathered in the cramped back room of a local diner, the low hum of the city buzzing outside the windows. The stakes had never been higher, and every move now carried a risk that could change everything. Mark spread out a series of printouts on the table. Property deeds, financial records, and transcriptions from the recordings Jenna had uncovered. Each piece was a thread in the tangled web Karen Whitmore had spun, and tonight they planned to pull hard. We have enough evidence to bring down Karen and the whole operation, Mark said, voice low and steady. But we need to catch them, in the act. Something undeniable. Daniel nodded, determination burning in his eyes. Amber still has the keys to my house. If we can get inside and find physical proof, it'll be the smoking gun we need. Jenna frowned. It's risky. Amber's no fool. She's likely watching the property, maybe even expecting us. We don't have a choice, Daniel said. If we wait, they'll cover their tracks. After hours of preparation, the plan was set. That night, Daniel and Mark drove separately to the neighborhood, parking a few blocks away from the house, now claimed by Amber. The streets were eerily quiet, shadows pooling under the streetlights like lurking threats. As Daniel crept toward his front door, Mark stayed close, ready to intervene if things went south. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest as he carefully picked the lock, an old skill from years ago, now put to desperate use. The door clicked open. Inside, the house was dark and still, a ghost of the home Daniel once knew. But as they moved from room to room, a faint glow caught Daniel's eye from the study, a laptop left open, screensaver frozen on a financial spreadsheet. Mark whispered, "Jackpot." Daniel approached, fingers trembling, and quickly searched for files. Hidden in a folder labeled Transfers were bank statements and emails showing wire transfers from the shell company, Golden Oaks Investments, directly to accounts linked to Karen's sister and several HOA members. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the hallway. "Get ready," Daniel hissed. Amber appeared, a shadow in the doorway, holding a flashlight. Her smirk was gone, replaced by a cold, steely glare. "Well, well, what do we have here?" she said softly. "Breaking and entering, Daniel. You're desperate." Daniel stepped forward, holding up his phone. "We have proof. Your scam ends tonight." Amber laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You don't know who you're messing with." Before they could react, a door slammed upstairs. Footsteps hurried down the stairs. The unmistakable voice of Karen Whitmore filled the room. "You really think you can outsmart me?" Karen said, her tone icy and dangerous. "You're nothing but a pest." Mark moved to block Amber, but Karen raised a hand. "No need for violence yet." Karen's eyes locked on Daniel. "If you want your house back, you'll stop this now." Daniel's chest tightened. "I'm not stopping, not until justice is done." Karen smiled thinly. "Then you're going to lose everything." "I've already made arrangements." Suddenly, the front door burst open, and several uniformed officers flooded in, guns drawn. "Karen Whitmore, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy," the lead officer announced. Karen's face twisted in rage, but she didn't resist. Amber was handcuffed moments later. Daniel stood in stunned silence as the officers read the charges aloud. The sting operation had worked. As Karen and Amber were led away, Daniel felt a wave of relief wash over him. His home, his life, his neighborhood, it was finally free from the shadow that had loomed for too long. But as he looked around the house, battered but still his, Daniel knew the fight wasn't entirely over. There were still secrets to uncover and scars to heal. But for the first time, in months, hope had returned to Whispering Pines. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as the trial of Karen Whitmore unfolded. Daniel sat quietly, clutching the legal documents that confirmed his regained ownership of 143 Willow Creek Lane. After months of battling deception, threats, and betrayal, the verdict was near, and the weight on his shoulders finally began to lift. Karen's smirk had vanished, replaced by a cold, defeated silence. The evidence was overwhelming: forged deeds, fraudulent sales, bribed officials, and a string of coerced neighbors, all meticulously uncovered by Daniel and his unlikely allies. On the day the judge officially returned Daniel's property deed, a small crowd gathered outside the courthouse. Neighbors who had once avoided him now approached with nods of respect and apologies. Claire, the former HOA board member, came forward with a warm smile. "You did what no one else dared, Daniel. You saved this neighborhood." Daniel nodded, emotion tightening his throat. "We saved it, together." Back home, as he stepped through the front door of his reclaimed house, memories flooded him. Laughter, quiet mornings, the feeling of belonging. Everything Karen had tried to steal was finally his again. But just as he began unpacking boxes in the living room, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You think it's over?" "Think again." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. His fingers trembled as he opened the message. Attached was a photo, a deed, dated just a week ago, for another property in Whispering Pines. But this one wasn't signed by Karen. It was signed by Amber. And the property? A house Daniel recognized immediately, the one next door. His mind raced. Had Amber been playing her own game all along? Was the fraud bigger than Karen's scheme? He turned to Mark and Jenna, who had stopped by to help with the move. "We have to look into this," Daniel said grimly. "The fight isn't over." Jenna nodded, already pulling up records on her laptop. "There's more going on here than we thought." Mark leaned forward, eyes sharp. "And if Amber's involved, we need to be careful. She's smarter and more dangerous than she let on." Daniel felt a mix of exhaustion and resolve. This neighborhood, his home, was a battleground, one he wasn't willing to abandon, but this time he was ready. Together with his newfound allies, Daniel vowed to expose the full truth, no matter how deep the conspiracy ran, because some homes aren't just buildings, they're stories, their lives, and Daniel was determined to protect his, the end.